we would like to have a new singer. Visual anyway, I mean. Right, so now to keep things moving, we're going to move to the Airservices update on the flight paths now. So we might start with the noise and operations report first from Tim and Chris, and then we can move to the flight path information. Chris and Tim?
No, we're just going
the one I think called
Airservices report. Was it no? Yeah, probably.
Normally what we do on this occasion is just prevent the previous quarter's noise complaints from the NCIS. Given the special interest today, the Noise Complaint Service have brought the complaints up pretty much today, so it won't be just the previous quarter. So finished outside of our main area of concern here today. So if you just get ahead there, there were 14 complaints for quarter 3 in 2017. So an increase from no complaints in quarter 2 of 2017. In the same quarter of the previous year, so there were no complaints also. Been a total of 15 individual complaints for the year to 30th of September 2017.
Just before we move on to that, just to see that it is complainants, it's not physical complaints. So there's not 100 complaints by a particular individual, that's the number of registered complaints that we're taking information from.
The main issue raised for quarter 3 obviously was the implementation of the flight path changes on the 14th of September. One complainant had contacted Airservices prior to this date, so it was a complainant that wasn't related to the changes. And you can see from the graph there that the bulk of the complaints are referring to the runway 30 arrivals, change the flight path from runway 30, which is landing to the north. So that the landing to the north has caused the most concern to residents, obviously, and that's Airservices' response to that, which Roger will present shortly. And for the first month of implementation, runway 30 was used predominantly due to prevailing winds. Now that we're in the spring session, we are finding we're using runway 12 a lot more regularly now as well. We've complaint reference the 30 departures at Richmond. The changes to the departure path at Richmond generated one complaint. All other suburbs were affected by the 30 arrival, so as I said, the bulk of our complaints came from Sea Levy and Boomer Bay. Next one. Roger Chambers, introduced previously, will make a presentation on the response to the consultation that recently took place. So any questions I'd ask to hold off until Roger's made his presentation as well. If CAG members have been approached by individuals, particularly councils and airport, we ask that any complaints be directed to the Airservices website, and we do note that that has been the case, and Airservices have been able to formulate a response because of the uptake and the use of the Noise Complaint Information Service. Again, previous meetings, strongly encourage people to use the NCIS as the main point of contact.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Chris and Tim at this stage?
Is there a question?
David.
Do you have any data on the complaints to date?
That's the complainant list.
To date?
Yeah, or 30th.
They closed the 30th.
We'll check on that.
So that period ended the 30th of September.
I'm happy to answer that. There are, from up to the community consultation on the 11th of November, we had 70 complainants in relation to the change to the 6 stars up to 11th of November. I don't have any data from 11th of November on the number of complainants.
don't have any data.
Since I don't have the data since 11th of November. I was saying when we came and did community consultation on 11th of November, we'd had 70 complainants to that point. I just don't have an update from 11th of November.
So you said there was 15 to the 30th, but to date there's 70?
Correct, yeah.
For Richmond campaign area, how many complaints did you say we had up there? Did I hear only one?
It was one for Richmond. I believe that was a 3-0 departure.
Yes. But there are no others to the north, around the Richmond area?
Not registered to the 30th of September. That may be updated on that.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll check on that.
At council, we've had a couple.
Yeah.
But,
And that's what we were hearing in previous CAGs, is that there are other sources of noise complaints. That's why we're trying to encourage them to get registered to the NCIS. So,
and we have done that.
yeah, that's good. We appreciate it.
Were there none from Madonna at all?
Unless it was included in a district of one of those.
So it's hard to decipher just how many people from Madonna actually complain if they're bundled in with Dunalley, for example.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Any other questions at this stage? Done okay? Right, thank you then, Tim and Chris. We'll now move to Roger Chambers. Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be able to come to the next slide, thanks. Simon? Okay. On the 14th of September this year, Airservices implemented new 60 stars that are based on that use satellite-based navigation systems. They were implemented to improve the safety of the operation of the air transport system here at Hobart, and are an essential part of continuing to maintain and lift the safety standards for the travelling public. Following the implementation of those citizen stars, we had considerable community concern raised with us through NCIS in relation to the runway 30 star. So Airservices is committed to a review of that star and to consult with the communities affected by the runway 30 star. We now have some sufficient information from that consultation process and feedback from the community to inform the CAG of Airservices' intent for our next step. The report in relation to that review will be available by the end of this week. All of the content of the report has been considered so that Airservices may be able to communicate the intent of what we were doing, but the finalisation of the report is still in progress. So moving to the next slide. So the runway 30 star is depicted there in the yellow and was implemented on the 14th of September. And you can see from where the two arms of the star join just near Kellerby and then run south, that it affects the communities in that north to south region from Kellerby down to Dunalley. At that bottom point it joins the RNAV instrument approach, which is the red line there which takes it onto the final approach path. Our Airservices engagement in relation to the implementation of that SISTA did not extend to those communities, and we certainly acknowledged that was not sufficient, and we did that directly with the residents who came to consultation on the 11th of November. So we conducted consultation on the 11th of November in Dunalley. We listened to the concerns of the residents. We socialised alternatives that we are working on developing to improve the noise outcomes, and we obtained community feedback not only at the 11th of November forum at Dunalley, but that community feedback was open until midnight Sunday, just 2 days ago. So moving to the next slide. At the consultation we presented the current star and 3 other alternatives. We had more than 70 people attend that consultation forum. We had 70 people register their attendance, but there were certainly more than that who came. Not everyone registered their attendance. We acknowledge that there was a very short time frame for the consultation period, And we recognise that puts a lot of pressure on the community, but also on Airservices on delivery. But the reason that we have done that is because the timing of the CAGs are important in terms of taking changes through the CAG before we implement them. And had we delayed that consultation, the next CAG understands the 22nd of February, and that would have delayed any potential implementation of any remedial action we could implement over the short term. So that's the reason why we did that consultation in that short time frame. The alternatives we look at, there is alternative one, which is the current star. That's the star in yellow. Alternative two is just to the west of the Dunalley line, and it's in green. You can see that up there. And then alternative three is that eastern alternative, which comes down the coast to the east of Maria Island, and then comes in down near Madonna. And alternative four is over to the west, and to bring the traffic to the west of Hobart, and then up near Sloping Main to join their final approach path there. The alternatives from the east, the overwater alternative, and the alternative from the west are preliminary designs, and they require significant development work to progress, including environmental assessments, community consultation, and airspace design change, because those designs at the moment are not captured within controlled airspace and other requirements we do have. So alternatives 3 and 4 are longer term alternatives. The alternative in green puts the aircraft as close as possible to the previous flight path that took aircraft to the final path for the instrument approach, for the RNAV approach.
Right.
Prior to September. So if we go to the next slide. So this one has, the yellow there is the alternative 1, the current approach. Alternative 2 is in the green, and the blue shaded area are the flight paths of aircraft that conducted the RNAV instrument approach prior to the 14th of September. So alternative 2, what we've tried to do is...
Excuse me, Chair. Can we ask a question about that?
I can take questions at the end. I'm happy to.
Then go through this.
I'll go through the presentation. Yep. So alternative 2 was to move it as close as possible to the approach path that was used for the RNAV approach, and that's what we've been able to achieve with that. And doing that and moving those aircraft to the west of that Kellerby, Dunalley, north-south line. What that does is it will provide some relief and reduce the noise impact in that Kellerby to Dunalley area. It certainly reduces the direct overflight there over Copping and Dunalley, and moves it further away from Booma Bay and Kellerby. We move to the next slide. So that alternative 2, that's the final design of alternative 2 with the two paths, one that comes from the east coast and one that comes from Melbourne. And you can see there that has moved to the west of the Kellerby-Dunalley line, and then the final turn is very similar to where it was onto the instrument approach path there. So move to the next slide. In summary, the community preference from the feedback we had was overwhelmingly to revert to prior to the 14th September flight paths. It's not possible for Airservices to revert to the flight paths prior to the 14th September for two reasons. The first reason is that the VOR navigation aid has been relocated. It is also now part of the backup navigation network, and the primary navigation network for Australia is a satellite-based navigation network. The second part is that there were no SIDS or stars with the VOR. The implementation of SIDS or stars is principally a safety improvement that Airservices is committed to putting in place where traffic level is warranted and complexity warrants it, and that's certainly the case here at Hobart. Alternative 2 will provide an improved community outcome in the shortest time frame possible. And Airservices' intent is to implement Alternative 2 as soon as practicable, and the earliest possible implementation date for that is 1 March. Airservices is also committed to a further review of the SIDS stars of Hobart, including Alternatives 3 and 4, and that will commence in February 2018, with terms of reference for that review available late January. And Airservices will engage with the communities during that review. Maybe take questions.
Sorry, Roger, just that you're talking about option 2 being closely aligned to previous flight paths. You haven't included the visual flight paths, which were the bulk of arrivals at Hobart Airport. I've got a diagram here showing the actual flight paths, not just the ones you've selected, which were infrequently used. So that diagram is actually, what you're saying is a bit misleading and implies that you're just putting the flight path close to where it was before, which is not the case. The residents' area hasn't previously been overflown, and that's consistent with what Airservices has been saying all along. I understand that the communication to this group that you made was that no areas would be newly overflown, as your environmental assessment showed. And yet you misled this group to say that there wouldn't be any areas that were newly overflown, so you're kind of continuing that misrepresentation through the diagram, I would have thought.
So it's not correct what you're saying. So the first thing is, making very clear, this is moving it to the same approach path that aircraft used when they flew the RNAV approach.
Yes, but that's not what the diagram suggests, is it?
That's exactly what the diagram suggests. Because that's what I'm saying, yeah, it's the RNAV approach, very clearly. We will not be reverting to visual approaches.
I'm just saying that your diagram is misleading people, and on the day you showed only that diagram, leaving the impression that your option 2 would be on the same route as a previous flight path. That's not correct. That's not the full story.
The previous RNAV flight path.
Absolutely, the previous RNAV flight.
Yeah, that's not what's the impression you've left with people. But why wouldn't you show the actual previous flight paths?
That's why we've given it in the handout, isn't it?
No, that's what you've given in the handout. This is what was in your environmental assessment, which was not available to people and was not available to this group. So I think that diagram and the impression that you're leaving is misleading. So that's what I thought.
I don't agree with you, but that's...
Well, that stacks up.
We're always going to have different views. I've made this very clear that it is aligning with the RNAV approach.
Historically.
We cannot align this approach with the visual approaches.
Why is the RNAV approach sealed and set in concrete? Why can't that be moved? Because that seems to be the showstopper. You're always aligning to the RNAV. Why can't we move that further south?
The RNAV approach is built to a standard and designed to a standard.
Everything in life is designed to a standard.
Exactly right,
so why can't you move it? Is it a lengthy process?
The RNAV approach is designed to a standard. There are international standards that Australia quite proudly is subscribed to, and the whole reason we have subscribed to this is to ensure that we can maintain the appropriate level of safety for aviation. That's what we're here for. As an organisation, our prime purpose is the safety.
We understand all that. Who designs the RNAV path? Is it Airservices? Right, so you are empowered to move it as well.
Not outside the standards.
Are you absolutely certain that you're completely familiar with that standard, that you can make a comment today to say that it cannot be moved? Is that what you're telling this group?
I've said it's designed to the standards, and that's what our design is.
So is Airservices receptive to reviewing the RNAV path? Because from what I've looked at, that would mitigate all or most of the noise problems here by moving that RNAV path.
I certainly, as I said in the summary, we can go back to the summary, we are reviewing the SIDS stars approaches, and if the RNAV is preventing an improvement of the SIDS stars and the safety, and it can be adjusted within the design changes, that will be part of the review. But I will not guarantee that can be changed.
But what about the noise impact on residents? There's more to life than just improving the star system. There's the prospect of improving the noise outcome for all the residents of Madonna, for example. All of your models there show, even your easterly approach shows a devastating impact on the Madonna community.
Look,
What you've done here is you've mitigated the impact on the most vocal group, the Boomer Bay group, but at what cost? You're transferring the noise penalty to either the east side through Kettering and Snug or the Madonna side. Why can't you move the whole process further south and just overfly the water?
so as I said in the summary, papers, we're reviewing the Citizen Stars. We will do a full review. I made it really clear, and I made it clear that we will gain input from the community for that. So I'm not going to sit here and debate with you over what can and can't be moved, but I am happy to make it clear that we're committed to that review and we're committed to taking that input.
And how can we gauge that commitment?
I'll just put it in writing.
Okay.
Sitting here on the minutes of the CAG. I'm not sure what more you want.
Can I speak to that, Chair?
Joe.
Yes, thank you. Can I draw your attention to the last bullet point there?
Yeah.
You're saying that you've put it in writing, that is your commitment from now on. Given your policy to engage with communities ahead of changes, why was that not implemented before 14th of September?
For the same reason we spoke to you when we were at the community consultation. We grossly underestimated the impact of that.
You did.
Impact.
You
And
did.
we acknowledged it.
Okay, so there's one thing to acknowledge with respect, the impact, the direct impact, tangible harm that's being done right now. In any due process and planning, that should be done ahead of changes. Do you acknowledge that?
That's exactly what we've acknowledged.
So why is this a knee-jerk now? You're saying you can't change anything and we'll start the consultation process. You're still calling it a consultation on the 11th of November. It was not a consultation. The whole design was flawed. It was not consultation. At no point has this been consultation.
There was only ever the one option, option 2. Option 1 was do nothing. Option 3 and 4 are so far into the future that they're unviable.
Well, I think it's out of control. I think we're going around the same
Yeah.
points. Okay. I think Roger said what he's prepared to do. He says there will be community consultation. I guess it's important that everybody keep an eye out for it.
In the absence of that, you can appreciate the frustration.
Absolutely.
Okay?
The Chair, are you aware that this group and yourself included were given incorrect information at the June meeting?
No, I'm not prepared to say that I'm aware of that. I'm not unaware of it either. I just don't know whether that's the case or not. We've been briefed about this a couple of times, and when it happened in September. I do want to say that I'm sorry I couldn't be there on the 11th. I was actually in Devonport, part of a electric vehicle conference.
A lot of people were unavailable given the short time frames.
I'm at the table Airservices environmental assessment document, which says that new communities will be overflown, and also your minutes, at which they said that no new communities will be overflown. Would you be prepared to minute that?
We can make a note of it, sure.
Would you like me to table that document?
We can refer to it because I presume it's on their website.
The stakeholder management strategy isn't on their website, and that's the document that promoted the message that no new communities would be overflowing to this group, and also to local MPs.
If you want to leave that information with Simon, then that's fine. You can attach it to the notes.
Thank you.
We have notes for the meeting. We don't call them minutes because this is not as formal as having notes for the meeting.
Yeah.
Is there anything else anyone would like to say?
I've just got one final thing to say. On the day of the Dunalley community meeting, you distributed a form for residents to fill out. The very top line says, please give us your response to options 1 and 2. Options 3 and 4 weren't on the form.
We made it very clear that options 3 and 4 there will be further detailed work and consultation. And we made it very clear that the alternative 2 was, we were working on that to provide the earliest possible respite for the residents of the Dunalley Kellerby line.
It does nothing for me. At 1,000 metres, I have A320s flying over my bedroom. 1,000 metres. All of your projections show a worsening of that situation for me. What would you like me to do?
One of the things that we always have to consider is the broader community noise impact. So in terms of designing any flight path, we understand that there are some people who are going to be affected, and clearly that you're one of those, and it's something that I cannot change. But where we can reduce the impact on the broader community, we do attempt that, and that's what we've done.
So I'm to be your sacrificial lamb.
I'm not saying that at all.
So at the minutes of the last meeting, Airservices advised that this new flight path flies over vacant rural land. Do 1,000 people living in a chosen location for that peace and serenity not count? Are they considered sheep?
As I said before, I acknowledge that we completely underestimated the impact.
There is significant harm being done now.
I think yes.
I think we've.
It's one thing to say, sorry, we didn't consult. Sorry, we were in contravention of our own protocols. It's another thing to take action where you can. You're saying it's not possible to revert to the existing route. It's our understanding that DME VOR beacon has been reinstated. What are the technical things precluding reverting to that route, the existing route, ahead of all of the work that needs to be done to mitigate the impact?
So the first technical thing is that there are published approaches, or the second technical thing is a safety issue, and that is we've implemented STARS for a very important reason here at Hobart, and that's to manage the traffic flow of the tens of thousands of passengers who travel in those airline aircraft. From a safety perspective, we are not going to revert to a situation where they do not have STARS. We do not have any STARS.
Is it less safe?
Excuse me. We do not have any STARS designed for the VOR. We do have STARS, and we are obviously amending those to try and ameliorate the noise effect on those communities in that north-south line there, and that's what we are attempting to do. But we don't have STARS for the VOR, and we will not be reverting back to the visual approach that were being done in the past, because we have a
was that unsafe, the previous
Can I finish,
route?
please?
Sure.
Okay. We have an obligation, first and foremost, to ensure the safety of these people flying in these aeroplanes.
Mm-hmm.
That is the first and foremost.
You keep saying that, but the safety record doesn't justify it.
It does because the...
When was the last time we had an aircraft crash in Hobart?
Have you ever sat in front of a coroner explaining to them what's been about an aircraft accident?
Not in Hobart, I haven't.
I have twice. And I can tell you it is not about waiting for an accident to happen. It's about putting
Would you like to sit in my lounge room for a morning?
We're getting very debated at the moment. I think, I'm not sure much more is going to be achieved by the going
So what concerns me is that basically there has been minimal environmental assessment done to actually to put this in place in the first place, because the excuse was given that we were previously overflown, and we discussed that already that we weren't. And now option 2 is being implemented, which is moving it to another location. Presumably there's going to be other environmental impact as in move, but again, there's no environmental impact statement being done, it's being moved just like that. So my concern is that basically this has been moved without due process, and it's going to be moved again as a new jerk without due process.
Well, it could be said in response to concerns raised.
But the problem is that the environmental assessment still hasn't been done.
Yeah, so the first one, it is being moved in response to genuine concerns raised by the community. So that's the first part. The second part, there is an environmental assessment that is being done in relation to that change. And the third part, it does not require an environmental impact statement. Therefore, for changes that result in significant impact on the environmental bioprotection and diversity act, which it doesn't, in this case, that does not.
So that environmental impact refers to Ramsar, and so it's saying Ramsar sites, which are saying, okay, it seems to refer to Pittwater and the Ramsar rating there. However, it doesn't take into account any of the other areas which have been overflown, which has contained 5 critically endangered species, which potentially have then created that area as a refuge zone Now you're going to shift it again, potentially to another area. It's just gone through nesting, breeding seasons and the like. None of that's been taken into account, none of it's been looked at. The noise modelling which has been done in an office in Canberra somewhere or other. It doesn't take into account any of the topology on the ground. Boom Bay and that whole area acts as a natural amphitheatre. So all the noise model, or the noise assessment has been done to say that it's not over 60 dB. Well, I can guarantee that in some places there it's certainly over 60 dB. I can have a next door neighbour in Toronto going hell for leather on Sunday morning, and I'll hear planes going over well and truly above that audio level. The modelling is a whitewash. You know, it really annoys me when I see people go, we modelled it and that's fine, because when you drill into the modelling, I work with scientific models all the time. The models are only good as an input. Nobody's ground truth the model to see what it's actually. Has anybody been down to the level and going, it's definitely 60 dB? No, I guarantee you sites that it certainly isn't. And on a regular basis, if we get a northern breeze, we've got 30 planes a day, pretty much all of those are over 60 dB. So, you know, to say it's been modelled and done an environmental impact statement or assessment in that space, when you actually read the document, it's very light.
My response is the change has an environmental impact assessment conducted to it.
I'm very aware of the fact that we're more than half an hour on this item on the agenda. Mr. Gray, do you want to say anything?
Look, I think it's all been said before. I just like to express my disappointment. I'm directly under the latest new flight path, and I sold my business to 6 months ago in order to start a new business to employ more people. I think I have the runs on the board. I employed 37 people for the last one, and now as a result of your decision and the lack of consultation, that's now on hold. That's now finished. So it's another 7 to 9 jobs.
That's a pretty big hit.
Farmland, you just put the overline.
Yeah.
And really, Dunalley cops it no matter which way it comes. So if you had consulted with the community as per your policy, we wouldn't have been in this position. I wouldn't have sold the last business to start the new one. It cost me a fortune.
Thank you. Take on board.
I just can't accept that that's sufficient. That's not sufficient. For the community, Airservices, I'll let the floor know that Airservices were unaware of the 2013 bushfires. That was admitted on the 11th. How can this be that they are unaware of the impact that's already been wrought on the community? People that are genuine are trying to rebuild and are trying to reinvest in the area.
And quite frankly, I'm quite disgusted that we've been put in this position that we have to be talking about the bushfires again.
Yeah.
You know,
Agreed.
This is not a boohoo situation. We're not trying to. We've adapted since the bushfires.
That's right.
You know, our personal lives, our businesses, and we made a choice to adapt our business to the tourism industry. And now we have to bring it up all over again. And you've divided the community.
Yeah. That's the harm that I'm talking about. And that is the harm that has not been gauged. We can talk about Airservices will engage with the community during the review. Your deficiencies have caused tangible harm. That has to be remediated. If that has to be done in a litigious situation, it will be. But we are asking for a serious review that implements serious relief on this community. That is in your court.
And that's what we've committed to do.
No, you haven't. You've thrust alternative 2 on the community.
Which is a token effort that makes very little difference to the community.
And is a disgust.
I think it's time now, and I think their views have been very politely, forcefully, clearly expressed. I think they've been heard. I guess we'll see what happens in the next couple of months, whether you can indicate it or not, and what happens next. I think it's time for us, though, to close this item and get on with the rest of the meeting, if you don't mind. Is there anything else, though, you haven't said that you particularly would like Airservices to hear?
Just one concern that the Airservices were individually meeting with residents, and I'm aware of one resident who lives in Kelly who had a secret meeting with Airservices, and it turns out that community is now advantaged by this, and puts that resident in a very difficult position. that, the lack of transparency, and it puts that resident in a very difficult position because his property, which is now for sale, has been advantaged by option 2. And,
Well, I think what I was still going to national meetings with CAG, fellow chairs and so on, this is what always happens. The community is always divided, there are winners and losers, no matter what you do.
But normally we have a bit more notice.
Yes,
Like some notice at all, wouldn't they?
In contrast, the highway drive-through virtual impression as a fantastic tool for community consultation, why on earth can't something similar be implemented ahead of changes?
Look, they're really good examples for us to go away and look at how we can do it. There's no...
We need you to find a way to fix it as well as improving your systems.
That's what they're going to have a look at. They can't say anything at this stage and just to go and see what.
They haven't got the runs on the board for trust, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They failed the community acceptance test. Failed miserably.
Can I make a comment, please? I'm a local resident. I live right next to the airport and have done for 17 years, and we endure a lot of noise. Now, I also work in the tourism industry. We have Barilla Bay oysters over the road that's right under the flight path, literally right under the flight path. And I think what we have to look at here is that, yes, from what I'm hearing, mistakes have been made in consultation, but to me it would seem to be it's time to draw a bit of a line in the sand. Yes, mistakes have been made, but look towards a positive future for tourism for businesses. I run a business as well. I think a lot of this is based on fear, and fear comes partly through not being heard. And I think it's been well acknowledged that, the community hasn't been heard in this regard. I came to this process quite late. I thought a lot of this had been done. But as a local resident, we cop a lot of noise, and you do, it sounds very trite, but you do actually get used to a fair bit.
If you move to the airport area, you expect that. If you live in a quiet rural area, you don't expect it.
I think what is happening in Tasmania, as we've all seen with the development of Mona and a significant increase in the number of tourism, we all have to expect that there are going to be changes. There are more ferries coming into the state.
This is a concentrated impact.
Yes, I understand
on one area.
I'm not arguing that.
There's no noise sharing arrangement here. Where we used to have multiple paths, now we have one path.
But I think we have to look at the broader picture of tourism. If we want the benefits of tourism, we're going to
I'm sorry, I don't run a tourist business, so I can't appreciate your point of view. And I never intend to.
I think it very much depends on the type of tourist business. And as Joe was saying, if you live 45 minutes drive away from an airport, you've never had a concentrated amount of planes going through over here, and you're proposing to build a certain type of tourism business that relies on that serenity, and that doesn't work. I'm very aware of the place. I know them very well.